Okay, hello everybody. John Kerr here, publisher of the Athletic Scouts. Hope everybody is doing well. Excited to have on our podcast this week former Chicago Bears coach, currently the special teams coordinator, and I'm guessing offensive assistant probably. I'm sure he helps with the game planning there with the Temple Owls, knowing his background as an offensive. He's shaking his head, but he's kind of a humble braggart. That would be head coach Brian Ginn. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing great. How you doing, John?
Doing well, doing well.
Good.
Again, those watching this, remember Brian was a again coach of the Bears under Matt Nagy for a number of years. Coached out east at Delaware, and now is in his second year at Temple. Actually, special teams coordinator is his official title, but he's been in town for the last couple of weeks, kind of visiting his family, who are still here in Lake Forest. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the interview, but I wanted to start with Brian. Just kind of good to see you, and tell us, what have you been up to these last 2 weeks here in Lake Forest?
Well, the last 2 weeks it's been kind of nice. I've been spending time with the family. As you said, I've got two daughters who are twins, who are juniors at Lake Forest, and one's involved in badminton. So I've seen a number of badminton matches, I guess they're called. And then one's in track, so I've seen a couple track meets. And then I've got a son who's in currently in eighth grade, who's in football and 7-on-7 right now. So I've seen a lot of that, and I've probably seen. My wife would tell you I've seen more of her than she would care to see. So she's ready for me to go back next Monday.
Yeah, no, I have to. I was trying to do a quick AI search as to what badminton, if that's a game or a match. It's like volleyball. When I was a sports writer, I was always like, my editors would always say, one guy would say it's a match, another guy would say it's a game. So I guess we'll just fall on, can't go wrong with. How about just athletic contest?
Yeah, it's a good contest.
Good contest, absolutely. So that's
Yep.
that's with the birdies, right? The kind of the birdies for the
Yes.
rackets, right? Okay, got it.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. A good workout, right? Definitely good workout.
It appears to be. I can't say that I've ever tried it.
Don't plan on joining like an over 50 league at any time soon there, Brian?
Nah,
Probably
I'm
not.
not. I'm not doing too much athletically anymore. Knees are gone.
I think most of our audience can kind of relate to that if you're over the age of 35, right? That's
Yeah.
you can certainly raise your hand, and we're certainly well above that. So let's talk about kind of what you've been up to at Temple here. I know you said you've been in town visiting your family mostly, but there is some football activity as well. Just talk about what your relationship with the school now in terms of what you are asked to do from a coaching perspective and also recruiting wise. How much are you doing these last 2 weeks in the Midwest?
Right. Well, I mean, just in terms of responsibilities, like you said, I'm the special teams coordinator. So running the kickoff return, punt return, field goal block. Obviously, working with the long snapper, kicker, punter in particular, but all those units. Recruiting wise, it's changed up a little bit. We've been there for a year. We've got a little bit bigger recruiting staff, which is honestly kind of nice because more of those guys get on the road to do the on the road recruiting. So I'm not on the road as much as I was last year. Where I think last year when we spoke, I was out here, you know, for 2 weeks hitting 5 or 6 schools every day and doing the on the road stuff. Where I'm not doing as much of that anymore, or really any of it. But there were, like you said, there were a lot of relationships that were made in that year. So I still spend time on the phone with those guys. There's surprisingly there's a number of Temple grads out in the area. Obviously with Chuck over at Lake Forest, I've known him for a while. So anytime I need anything, I can give him a shout. Just a number of different coaches throughout the area that I've gotten to know over the year, and then reaching out to them, talk on the phone. Somebody else will come and actually go into the schools and see the guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, when I get back next week, I'll spend. We got a busy May, busy June. We got to really get ready for training camp. We've got camps coming up. We've got official visits happening in June, and then we'll take some more time off in July when it becomes a dead period, and get ready for training camp. So it's kind of a sprint till about June 25th when we get out of the office with all the recruiting and preparation for camp, and kind of getting ahead of on the especially the first 4 or 5 opponents that we're going to see next year having a good idea of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good insight there on just what the recruiting calendar's like being a college coach. You've got 2 weeks here at home, but then when you get back, it's people might be thinking, wait a minute, the season doesn't start till September. But when you think about where things are in terms of being able I mean, recruiting is 12 months out of the year, right? That sort of never stops. But now with the portal and being able to, schedule certain windows when guys come in, I'm talking about that, about where we are in the calendar. Right. We're recording this on April 30th. So technically, what can college coaches do in terms of 27 graduates or, 28 graduates? What is the level of contact you can have? Specifically, let's start with, 27 graduates.
With the 27 graduate, where we're at right now is, we're in the process of going into their schools, visiting with them, home visits for the guys who would be, you know, priority, I would guess you would say. Recruits that we're trying to get on campus in June for official visits, maybe some others too. But this is a big month, for the 27s that, all the colleges are coming in, checking you out, getting to know you. Different than 8 years ago when I was in college before. Like we can actually sit down and speak with these kids, visit with families at this time. It used to just be go in and they had a general, you can bump into them and say hello so you could height and weight them, and that was all you could do. But now it's a totally different game. It's kind of live, on all aspects with the 27s right now. So that's where we're at basically through the month of May. That can happen. We won't be out quite that long. I think we're going till like May 20th, maybe a little bit sooner than that. And then June is, for everybody, all high school kids, that's a big, camp season. We'll run two specialist camps and two separate, skill camps, and then two 7-on-7s. So it's a big time for us to get kids on campus, evaluate them, whether that be 27s, 28s, 29s, even now the 30s getting in there. And then we'll also be doing our official visits with the high school, the 27s, guys that we're looking to try to get committed or, very high on our board. Even though they can't sign till December, those things happen in June now at the earliest. And then, obviously during the season, you'll have a couple visits as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Brian, how you've got maybe boots on the ground here, where you've got guys to recruit, but as a coach on a staff for a Division I program like Temple is, you're still recruiting, right? So just from your, I know you mentioned a little bit in the interview. So your involvement with 27s, is it the relationship building with the coaches? Are you having much contact with these kids yourself personally? Are you passing some of that stuff off to some of these recruiting guys? Just tell me your role day to
No,
day in recruiting.
it's a little bit of both. Like I said, I've been doing it long enough that you do have some relationships with coaches that go back upwards of 20 years. So, you always want to have somebody that can get in their ear. And, I know some of these guys, especially back on the East Coast, that, I can pick up the phone and give them a shout. With the players, right now, particularly, it's, kickers, punters, long snappers, that I'm getting on the phone with and talking to. Obviously once we start getting these guys on campus a little bit more, I'll talk to them about our plans with special teams. I'll be honest with you, not all of them want to hear that when they're on a visit, but that's okay. Their attitude changes when it becomes time to get on the bus and have a seat on the bus. They want to talk to you all of a sudden. But
Yep.
I like talking to those guys, especially the return guys, because they want to hear how they can get the ball in their hands, what they can do, how can we make that work.
Our guest is Brian Ginn. Brian is special teams coordinator for the Temple Owls. Temple Division I program in Philadelphia, actually plays at the Eagles stadium out there in an excellent conference. I mean, the American Conference is not technically a P4, right? It's no longer P5, right? Although I guess they are reforming the Pac-10, but not what it used to be. But they are sort of still in that. I mean, I guess would Temple be considered a G6, right? Would that be
I believe
accurate?
I believe that's what we're going with. Yeah. I guess I always go along the basketball realm of mid-major,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll probably get chastised for saying that. But yeah, I mean, we like to think of ourselves as the fifth conference, I mean, we had a playoff team this year with Tulane coming out of the American, and a number of other teams were in talks with that. It's spending 1 year in it. It's an extremely competitive league. Um, you know, Obviously, you look at the guys. I saw a lot of guys go in the draft, get signed free agent wise coming out. It was a lot of fun. It was very competitive last year dealing with it.
Yeah, no, there were some fun games to watch as a fan, knowing you were the coach, and pretty much everything is televised. Even and watching a lot of. I mean, the level of play, and this is what I want to ask you about some of the P4 guys maybe coming down and kind of poaching some of your players, because you do read about that, about guys, and strictly basically just because of rev share. Right, you guys don't necessarily have as much as maybe a Michigan would have from a rev share perspective. But you see how competitive it was. I know you guys had some really close games with the military academies specifically, right?
Yep.
Those games. So I think the level of play and the level of competition is certainly very, very high. Recruiting wise, and this goes into what I mentioned earlier from a rev share perspective. You're here in the Midwest. So you're sort of looking at players out here, but primarily is a lot of the recruiting for Temple based on the East Coast, not a function of, obviously it's your recruiting bed, but also from a rev share perspective, maybe you don't have to spend as much on a scholarship for one player. You might be able to get 2 for 1 because of the equivalency. If you recruit an in-state kid versus somebody who might be a Chicago area kid.
There's certainly a lot of attraction to that, because there still is, kids want to have their families watch them play. So, I think we signed 31 student athletes last year out of high school, and they all came from Connecticut down to Maryland,
Okay.
except for maybe one. It's definitely the footprint that we talk about. In the past when Temple's been really really good. New Jersey, Pennsylvania, that's where a bulk of the teams come from. But obviously we don't want to pass up good players. And coming out to the Chicago area, it makes sense because there's flights nonstop from O'Hare to Philly. Um, you know, the guys kind of understand the city atmosphere that we're in because it is a city school. Same thing with this getting down into the Georgia area, flying from Atlanta to Philly, easy.
Yeah.
Down into Florida, that type of stuff. The easier flights, I guess, to get to Philly, and so we don't want to pass up those opportunities. But we also understand there's a lot of good football in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. That Mid-Atlantic area. Down into Virginia that we want to take advantage of.
Yeah, and you said those are going to be kids that are going to be certainly closer to where you are, but also kids probably who are more familiar, right, with maybe a Temple or that conference, where maybe some kids in the Midwest aren't exactly as familiar. I want to ask you about the where we are with college sports as it relates to high school recruiting and how much that has impacted, meaning the portal, NIL, specifically the portal aspect to it. We're finally coming out of the kind of super senior era, right, Brian? We had the COVID kids who were 6-7 years players, right? These 24, 25-year-old guys that are
Right.
even in some cases 27, 28. You're starting to see the area where the NCAA, I think, is getting some wins when it comes to judges and lawsuits is in the area of eligibility. We're seeing now, I think, a proposal where now it's going to be 5 for 5, right? You got 5 years 5 years, and you get 5 years of eligibility. The reason for that, trying to keep away from all these people who would try to ask for an additional year, and you'd have somebody, the NCAA would grant some kids an additional year, hardship year, what used to be called, right, and then they wouldn't for other kids. So nobody really knew exactly how those decisions were made. What is a percentage where, for your school at Temple, where you try to reach from high school, or is it 70-30, 80-20, meaning 70% of develop recruits high school, 30% transfer? Is there a number for your school?
I don't know. Like we've never specifically talked about a number uh, per se. I've never heard them put it in percentage, but I can tell you, like I said, I think we added 50 new players to the roster, and we signed 31 scholarship kids out of high school, and I think four preferred walk-ons. So you're talking 35 to 15-ish. I think everybody now, in this day and age is gonna replenish from the transfer portal, and we're certainly going to look to continue to do that. But if we can get high school kids in and develop them, that's where we want to go. And I think to be honest with you, right now there's a lot of high school kids that are I don't know exactly how to probably maybe a little under recruited that Temple can get that maybe in years past you hadn't been able to get just because other schools aren't signing the 25 to 30 kids a year. And I look at some of the kids in our class that we signed, their film I thought was really good. And fortunately we had a lot of them at spring practice that, I thought were really, really good players that I don't know if 10 years ago, if they're signing at a group of six type school. So we'd like to get those kids, develop them, get them into our culture, and we're fortunate. We didn't have a lot of guys leave that that started for us last year or played a lot for us. In the portal last year, we had a lot of guys who had opportunities that decided to stay just because they saw the vision of what we're doing. They felt the culture that Coach Keeler's building, and they wanted to be part of it. So, you get them in the program and hope that's the case and push that to be the case with them.
Yeah, I saw an interview with your general manager, Clayton Barnes, right? Correct, the GM,
Correct.
and
Yep.
he discussed that the importance of recruiting your own roster, and he gave some insights on to when that process starts. Right, I think it's always one of those things that you're always kind of wondering as a fan of, like, okay, so when do these? So if you've got a kid who's maybe having a really good season after the first, let's say, week three. I think there was an offensive lineman, I think, of yours who you were able to
Yep.
re-sign, who was trying to be poached by the players. Like, when do you start those conversations? Right. I mean, when do and I think your GM, Coach Barnes had said he got text message from like a national football writer who had told him after week one that this offensive lineman was already being looked at by some of these Power Four teams.
Yeah.
So I guess that would force your hand a little bit. So we might need to be aggressive with some of these conversations, right? With that
Right.
sort of thing. So, how just your perspective from being back into the sport for 1 year now, where things are in terms of the calendar, the portal now being a one-time thing, right? It happens, I think, in January now, as opposed to being multiple times.
Right.
Has college football is it still sorting things out in terms of where it's going to be? You think in the next 3 years, or you think it's still finally kind of, you think the calendar is starting to get to where you as a coach and the staff can be able to do what you need to do, but also be able to have kind of a life outside of football? Or kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Oh boy. I think it's really a tricky situation because I like where we're at. I do. I like the fact that we went through spring practice. I got 15 practices with guys that I know are going to be in training camp. Where last year I had 15 practices, um, where I knew, there was a good chunk of them that weren't going to be in training camp, and there was going to be an even bigger chunk of guys that were coming in the summertime from the portal that we were going to teach all new things to in training camp, which you don't want to be doing, or in the summer OTAs that you get now, but they're all non-padded stuff and all that. Uh, so that aspect of it, I really like, and I think it's good for college football, good for the development of the players, which is what we're all about. The tricky part of this is when it happens. It's in the beginning of January, which we all know, bowl season runs into that, and now the college football playoffs run into that.
Right.
And I hate seeing guys go through a season. A lot of people think these bowl games don't mean anything. I can tell you, at a place like Temple, making a bowl game means something to us. And The last thing we want to do is have players opting out because they're getting other opportunities and they have to get in the portal and do it at that particular moment. Um, Same thing, like I can't imagine the college playoff teams, they're actually playing games while the portal's open. Um, so that part's tricky, but at the same time, these are student athletes. So in order for them to get to their next school, they've got to be admitted and enrolled for the second semester, which in some places, including ours, starts about January 10th. So
Yeah.
there's you can't do it in February and say they're going to be students and athletes and try to enroll them halfway through the semester. So there's a lot of that's why I say it's a tricky situation, I guess, because the timing of it sucks for the end of the season. But at the same time, in order for these kids to get the opportunity to be somewhere in the second semester, that's when you have to do it. Or you go back to running spring practice without knowing who your roster is. Or moving spring practice dates into June, which has been talked about too, I believe. I've heard that rumor. I don't know how much has been talked about. So, I think there's a little bit of figuring out with that, but I did like the fact that we had 15 practices of knowing that, okay, these are the guys we're working with.
Yeah.
Let's start the development here. Here's where we want to be at the end of spring ball, so we can pick up right here when we start summer training camp.
Yeah, I would think as a coach, certainty of personnel would be right up there, right, in terms of things that matter.
Oh
Knowing I've
yeah,
got
absolutely.
these guys were,
Absolutely. I mean, I just remember sitting down last year, even trying to put together a depth chart at this time last year, more so in June, whenever that was happening, May, whenever that was happening. It was guesswork. So you didn't even know where to start for training camp with first line, second line, third line, fourth line. Not that any of it matters at the start of training camp, but now you got a pretty good idea going in, and you know exactly what the guy on the second or third line you need to focus on with him to get him to the first or second line. So in that aspect, I do like it.
well, and you mentioned the portal window. You'd like to be in that position, right? Where you're still playing football and the portal is on, right? You've got that 2 week window. I think it's January 2nd to January 15th. I mean, every school there's unless there's whatever a handful of them, right, are not in that position. There's conversation of expansion, right? There's a 16 team playoff. I think that the SEC, I think, is from reports
Right.
are they prefer the Big Ten. I think wants 24.
Yep.
That seems to be the major disagreement. I think that will be resolved sometime in the next year or two. From your perspective, coaching at a school like Temple, I would think expansion in any form, whether it be 16 teams or 24 teams, would be something you'd be excited about because that would give you access to the playoff. What are your feelings on that as just as a coach or just a fan of the sport? Are you a 16 team guy or a 24 team, or do you like it where it is?
Well, again, as you said at the beginning, I was at the University of Delaware for a long time as a player and a coach, and the one AA playoffs, as I knew it, back in my day, as all us old timers say, it was a 16 team tournament, and I thought that was great. It's expanded to 24, and they're still running, but I always liked the 16 team tournament. I thought the one AA we we made it work. Changed. I think 2010 was the first year that it changed to an expanded field. Um, but and they're doing a good job with that. But so I just like the 16 teams. Everybody plays the first round. You win and you go on. You lose and you go home. You're not playing a team off a bye the next week. All that stuff. I get the expansion helps the group of six teams maybe a little bit. I don't know that expanding 24 to 24 is gonna get us more than, I mean, last year we had two, you know. I don't think there's gonna be more than two, so it's not a huge, you know, we all understand the conferences that everybody wants to see play in those extra 8 spots if that's what they end up doing, or 12 spots, whatever it is. So I'm a big proponent of the 16. I always thought that was a good deal. But nobody's going to listen to my opinion anyway. So
Well, I think there's a lot of people who do. I think there's some people who would like it to go back to 4 teams, right, Brian? Who prefer the BCS days, right? There's some people, right? We're definitely not going back to that. I think it'll be 16 or 24. I think the argument for 24 is just, again, it's again, these payrolls continue to go up with rev share and NIL, and there's only so much you can squeeze out of ticket buyers. I mean, you can only charge, I suppose you can charge $30 for a White Claw. You know, it was $20 last year for a 16-ounce White Claw when I was back at Michigan State. Maybe you can charge more than that. Point being revenue, right? So an expanded playoff means more money. You can sell more TV rights. Fox can maybe jump in there. Somebody else can jump in there, because I think ESPN pretty much has the market cornered on that. And again, and some programs, don't have Cody Campbell's. They don't have Texas Oil money. Right. The SEC, that's why the SEC is maybe not struggling, but they just don't necessarily have the alumni base that some of these schools do, right? So from your perspective, yes, more access to it, but I think it's from a revenue perspective, where also you're going to be able to generate the dollars necessary to be able to pay NIL rights to some of these guys.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, that's the bottom line with the expansion, right? Is how much revenue can be generated, and what's the best way of doing that? Keeping it on campus or expanding the bowl allocations for each round. So I think that's all things that they'll work through and figure out which is best, the 16 or 24.
Yeah, and maybe it'd be a little weird to have the Mayo Bowl as a playoff game, but maybe that's what it is. So that could be the 20. But again, if you're a fan, do you want to see Mississippi State against Northwestern, maybe a 7-5 Northwestern team against a 7-5 Mississippi State team, and that be the 23-24 playoff teams? I mean, is that as exciting or compelling as if it were just a regular bowl game? I don't know. That's something they can figure out right over the next couple of years here. A few more minutes here with Brian Ginn, former NFL coach, currently the special teams coordinator with the Temple Owls. One other question about state of college football, about the rev share, because there's two pots here when it comes to funding in college sports. Now you have the rev share part of it, which is now the schools directly paying the colleges, and currently it's about $20.5 million. Certain schools, certain conferences allocate a percentage of that to football. Most of it, let's just say, goes to football. I mean, if you're a UConn, right, you probably spend most of it to basketball, right? But most of it goes to, because you guys also do have a basketball team. At Temple, is it a conference mandated amount? Meaning, is it, hey, off the bat, 50% goes to football, or is it done by school?
I don't know that there's a percentage that has to go to football. I know the league has passed I believe they were the first league to pass you have to spend X amount in 3 years on the rev share. So they want to make sure teams are invested in this. But I think it's up to the school on where the money gets allocated individually. So, I know I try to stay out of the money talk as much as I can. But in conversations with our head coach, he's very happy with where we're at in terms of, we're certainly not at the tops of the league with it, but we're not at the bottom. So we feel like we're in a good spot, and whatever percentage that is of the money that Temple's given to the athletic program, he's in a good spot right now.
Feels pretty good about it, yeah. And then of course you have the NIL part, which is outside of rev share, right? And there's there's no cap on that, right? I mean, the NCAA has attempted to try to put a cap on it, but that's the part where the I would say unfair, but certainly if you're a school like Texas and you can spend $50 million on a roster, and you're a school like Cincinnati that can spend $10 million, and you're in the same conference, well, I guess what do you say to Cincinnati other than just, I guess you got to coach up your guys, right? As much as best as you can. But then you have an Indiana shows up, right, and wins a national championship out of nowhere, right? So when something like that happens, do you feel like that it can happen anywhere? I mean, even at a school like Temple, when you see James Madison make the playoff, you see Tulane make it, you see Cincinnati, what they did with a coach with not unsimilar pedigree than, Casey Keeler, right?
Yep.
Older guy, had success at different programs. Is that something, not that you guys talk about every single day, but is there a sense of like, okay, yeah, this is something that can happen here?
Yeah, certainly. Like we said, playing in the AAC, we know that this is one of the top five conferences in the country. And, you know, we know after playing last year, like we can be competitive in this conference. And if you win this conference, you got a chance to play in the playoffs. And if you know anything about Coach Keeler, like one thing he's not going to shy away from is those expectations. He talks about winning championships, and if we can put ourselves in position to win the American Conference, then that's going to put you in the discussion for playing in the tournament. And obviously we'd like to get there. We know we got work to do. But we think we've upgraded the roster. Our entire coaching staff is back. We didn't lose anybody of the full-time coaches. So, the continuity there is there. We're excited about where we're at. We got a long way to go before we get to September, but we think we've had a good start at this point.
So, Brian, what do you look for in a recruit? So this is your pitch, right? To anybody out there watching this, a parent, high school kid, even a middle school athlete who's interested in playing, we might have said, man, I just, this college football thing. I mean, I might have some interest in it. Two questions to you. One is specifically at Temple. What is a prototype of the type of athlete, without being position specific, just intangibles and characteristics you root for? And then secondly, for younger recruits out there or parents who are thinking about playing in college, what advice would you give to them? I know that obviously it's different for a 17-year-old than maybe like a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
But for somebody maybe hasn't started the process, who might be freshman year, sophomore year, what should they be doing to put themselves in a position to see if they can get evaluated?
Yeah. In terms of what we're looking for specifically, without getting into traits of each position, okay. We want to find somebody who loves the game of football, obviously. We're gonna ask a lot of them as a college football player. And so we want to make sure that's first and foremost, because there are a lot of guys who love the process of being recruited, but don't love the process of playing football. So we want to make sure we can filter the difference out. Hardworking, all that stuff, dedicated, smart. There's a lot that goes into this. A lot of learning that goes on. And then in particular with coming to Temple, we got to find somebody who's willing to go to a city school. And that's not a bad thing at all. I enjoy being there, but some people just don't want to be in the city, and that's fine. But we want to filter that out early before we get them there, and they're miserable with it. So that's kind of the overview of what we're looking for in guys that we want to recruit at Temple. And there's always the going back to Coach Chaney, the old basketball coach. There's always the Temple Tough motto, which we want tough guys, but that falls in line with the hard work and all that stuff. So in terms of what I recommend to the high school students, feels funny saying middle school students because that is where my son's at now, but it's the truth. Like, for him, I always try to tell him, don't worry about it right now. Just go work, because nothing's gonna happen. Nothing's gonna happen for you if you don't put film out there. So in order to put good film out there, you got to put in the work now. Whether that be in the weight room, on the field. I know everybody's got trainers for this and trainers for that. Make sure you're going to the right people, not to, people who are just looking for a money grab from you. Um, you know, put in the good work, learn your craft. But you got to put it on film. If you don't put it on film, then there's nothing that's going to come with it. The question has come up. The question has come up a lot. Like, playing one sport or multiple sports. I'll be honest, we do like seeing guys who play multiple sports. It's a little bit more, especially when you're evaluating football guys, you might only get 8 to 10 regular season games and 2 to 4 playoff games if you're on a good team and if you're on a good team, 70% of those games aren't competitive at all. So you don't really get to see a competitive spirit. You just get to see guys playing against kids they're better than. And whereas in basketball, you get 25 opportunities and we can, kind of evaluate that guy compete and different movement skills and all that stuff. So we do like seeing guys play other sports. That's not to say that, we won't recruit a guy who only plays football, but, you know, for those guys who are trying to decide, do I need to concentrate on one sport now? I would say no. But just keep working your craft and work hard at it. And
Yeah.
obviously the school part is real. Like if we can't get you into school, then
Yeah.
then you make it easy for us, this time of year when we're out in the schools and we're trying to get information on the 28th and we get a transcript that we know we can't get into school. That's just one less person on the list.
Yeah, they're looking for reasons to eliminate you, right? Probably, and that would be, the academic piece of it. Yeah, I'm glad you talked about the multi-sport participation thing because it comes up with the draft, NFL draft, which happened last week. We're recording this on April 30th. This ended the previous Saturday, and they talk about the number of guys that are drafted who are multi-sport guys. Now, look, they are the elite of the elite in terms of being drafted, just playing college sports, right? How about just making your varsity team? Right, that would be a good start, right? Probably for somebody in high school, it seemed playing time. But I would think what you just said, putting yourselves in a situation where you are a little stressed, right, where there's friction,
Oh
which
yeah.
could just be shooting a free throw, right, in a tie game. If you're an athlete who decides, something, I think I want to wrestle this winter. I've never wrestled before, but I think I want to try it because I want to teach myself what it's like to fail. Because you're going to fail a lot in individual sports, right? I
Yep.
would think those would be traits you would look for as a college coach.
Yeah. And speaking of wrestling, like you know, you look at the linebackers, D line type guys, like a lot of the really good ones are wrestlers because once they
Yeah,
get their hands on you, you're going down, because
yeah,
they're extremely good tacklers. It all correlates together, and there's basketball movements that cross over to other positions as well, and so we like to see all that stuff, but it's not, that's not the end all be all. But when kids ask us, we say play multiple sports.
yeah, yeah. And there's just too much data now that supports that. It's just I get if you're a 5-star guy and you're a junior and you got to go to camps and maybe you can't run track in the spring. But I get that.
I mean, there might become a time when, I guess I was
That's
probably looking more
specialized.
middle school because, that's where the question comes up. Once I get to high school, should I do this? Should I do that? No, just
Yeah,
go. Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes those things just kind of sort themselves out. Right? I mean, in terms of how whether you play 3 sports or 2 sports and that sort of thing. And I think the mental toughness part is sort of it's hard to make that tangent, right? It's hard to have a spreadsheet
Yeah.
with data and measure that, but it's one of those things you kind of know when you see it, right? It shows up on film, I would think.
Well, it shows up on film. It shows up, for us. That's why, we try to dig on these guys pretty good before we bring them to campus and really know what's coming in, both in that aspect and personality wise. Are they going to fit in our locker room? Like I talked about, one of Coach Keeler's biggest things is, he's the culture guy. He wants to make sure whatever's in our locker room is the type of person we want in there and not going to be, not going to drag a season down because we got one bad apple.
A couple more things, and I'll let you go here. Will have to make sure I ask you about your time in the NFL,
Hmm.
which predates your time at Temple. Brian was on. I can't. It's just 2 Bears coaches previously, 3 Bears coaches. I mean, it seems like they rotate every 3-4 years with Chicago. Again, living in Chicago for 40 years, I understand that. Matt Nagy, who I guess was the guy before the guy before the guy now. And you were there for 4 seasons with Matt Nagy's staff. Certainly part of that 2018 team, which had that great season and made the playoffs. What did you learn? I mean, now being back in college sports, anything that you take from that experience in the NFL that you're able to kind of help with your athletes now?
Well, yeah, I mean, before I did that, I'd never really thought of coaching special teams. So there's a lot that I carry over, and
Sure.
actually the first 2 years I was with the Bears, I was on the offensive staff. Um, I didn't switch over till 21 or the 2020 season, which was interesting in and of itself, and then the 2021 season. So a lot of what I teach special teams wise is exactly what Coach Tabor and I had done at the Bears. But just in general, I think the one thing, the biggest thing that I learned in the NFL is the time management. Um, where that's you get those guys in the building at 8 o'clock and they're not leaving till 5 or 6 o'clock, um, or you're not done with them until 5 or 6 o'clock or whatever it is, and then you've got to get to work for the planning for the next day, which so it kind of made me see like college wise, there's a lot more dead time because the guys have to go to class, um, and by NCAA rule, we're only allowed to have 4 hours a day with them. So there's a lot of time during the day where you know coaches in general, college, NFL, whatever it may be, they all like to brag to you about all the time they spend in the office, but like once you've coached in the NFL, you see all the time that, all the extra time you had in college where maybe you don't have to stay until midnight, 1 o'clock, punching the clock there. And so the time management has been, for me, it's been great. During the season, we practice in the morning. So the guys are out of there by 11 o'clock. And then, we're on to the next day, ready to roll. And it's been nice when you get to the evening hours and you don't have a ton of stuff to do.
Yeah, no doubt. And I would think too, you said even though athletes now are more like professionals, based on the fact that you can pay them now, they still do have to go to class, right? I mean, so
Mhm.
there's, I believe there was a question I saw somewhere online. Like, do these guys actually do go to class now? And yes, they do. There is an NCAA. I'm not sure. I think they have to take at least 3 or 6 credit hours a semester, right? I think at least minimum. But I assume at a school like Temple, most of your players are doing more than that, are working towards a degree because they're not going to play in the NFL.
Well,
So
in order, yeah, they have to be a full-time student, which I believe is, generally across the board, 12 credit hours. So they are taking classes now. Admittedly, since COVID, there are more online classes than there probably was pre-COVID, but you know, most of our guys are in, in-person classes and that type stuff. But they're doing work, and Temple's not an easy school. It's a good school. So there's some stress that comes along with that.
yep.
But we're working around it.
Yeah, no doubt. And as you said, it's those are the kind of guys that you want. You want the guys that are taking their academics seriously because that's going to transfer into the football area. But of course, by the time they arrive on campus, you guys have done most of your homework when it comes to that. Lastly, before I let you go, at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned again your home. You are living in Philadelphia and coaching for Temple while your family remains back here in Lake Forest, where you first moved here when you got the job with the Bears. You have 2 daughters who are at the high school, the public high school, Lake Forest High School. You have a son who I know is an 8th grader at the public middle school. Just give a sense of it's been over a year now, right, since you took this job with Temple.
Mhm.
Almost a year and a half now, probably, right, since you took the job. How is that going? How are you making that work? And as you said earlier, if I did ask Rachel, would she confirm that she's excited to see you go?
She's definitely excited. She can't wait for Monday at 2 o'clock when the plane leaves.
Champagne,
Um,
probably champagne, right? Okay.
probably so, I'm sure. It's I'm gonna say it's been good. I know that sounds weird because it is a little bit. In the season, it's it's probably the toughest and the easiest because that's the time of the year that I don't get home. Unless we have a bye weekend, I don't get home to see Rachel and the kids. Um, but at the same time, like I just was talking about, we're spending a lot of hours in the office working, and you're in season, you're in your routine, you know what Monday looks like, you know what Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, playing games on Saturday, starting it all over again on Sunday. Um, you know, uh, so for me, that's the longest I go without seeing them, but it's the easiest time because I'm so busy that I don't have time to think about it. Um, and then once we hit the off season, January, February, um, is usually pretty nice because we are doing some recruiting, but there's open weekends. So, anytime I have an open weekend, I get home and, Coach Keeler's been great. When I say weekend, that usually goes from Thursday afternoon till first thing Monday morning or so. So I get an extended time. And then we usually have spring break in March. So I get home for that week and then, the first week of March and then we're back into spring ball for 5 weeks. So you're still busy. And then now that spring ball's over, like I said, coach allowed me the opportunity to come home for 10 to 14 days here. Get a little time off around Memorial Day, be back. And then, I mean, this summer with the way the calendar works, we have, a almost 6 week vacation that in July that I'll be back for that. So it's going well. Like I said, obviously, I wouldn't say it's ideal, but we're making it work. Um, we had done this one time before my first year with the Bears. Rachel stayed back with the kids for 1 year, and the girls were only in fourth grade at that time, so they couldn't get themselves. So Rachel had to drive everybody everywhere, and that was a lot harder now. Now the girls are 17, they both have licenses, so they drive themselves wherever they need to go. So in that aspect, it's a lot easier for Rachel. She's already done it before, and this time it's a little easier.
Yeah, yeah, and of course you've got, and my understanding too is you've got your daughters, you've got one that plays tennis, one that does field hockey, so it's and of course Brayden plays football, so that fall, right? It's having two extra drivers. I mean, that would be difficult. It'd be easier if they just played the same sport, right? I'm sure, right? Why can't you just both play tennis, both play field hockey, right? you
It
know,
it
they,
it certainly would, but because they drive themselves or they're on the high school teams now, the bus takes them.
yeah, yeah, exactly,
So
yeah.
that certainly makes it easier than when, the girls were 10 years old or whatever fourth graders are, and Braden was in first grade and she was driving them all over town to three different things at the same time. So she's making it work. She's a
Yeah,
champ.
no doubt. No, anybody knows. I mean, Rachel's the best. Brian's wife. She's our unofficial team mom for our junior scouts group last year in eighth grade, and she was amazing in terms of the contributions to the team. And I always think I feel like for her, it's sort of like how it's more like as a mom being able to watch all of these things. Right, it's
Yeah.
being able to get to that field hockey game when hoping it's not at the same, or maybe it's at home, and then you just walk across the parking lot of West Campus and then watch the tennis meet or go walk across to the field and
Very,
feel that.
very rare, very rarely happens that they
I
can
know.
turn that up. Yeah.
But of course, made all the football games and streamed everything to us as well, which we always appreciate
I
that.
did appreciate that. That was the only way I got to watch was the streaming. So,
Yeah, that was awesome.
streaming tennis was a little difficult. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, not probably the
For,
best
for,
sport for that.
yeah, that's not the greatest streaming. So I don't know how many times we did that.
No, probably not. No, I would think especially when you're going back for those volleys. It's kind of hard to really
Yeah.
see what the how far you can go for that. So, and also, at least with the streaming part, you're able to see your son who inherited that 5.2 40 speed. I think that he got from his old man. But all that training that he's worked, I think, with the guys at Wynn and a few other places, just run past guys last fall. That was one thing about Braden. So is his ability to be able to overcome his inherited limitations athletically and have the type of year that he had last year for us.
Obviously, you got mom speed then. That's where he got that.
There you go. It gets what, School of Hard Knocks, right? From the old man.
Yeah,
He probably
no
writes out what
doubt.
that is.
No
Exactly. So,
doubt.
okay. All right, Brian, anything else you want to add to before we go here?
No, no,
You
this
want to
was
pitch
awesome,
Temple at all?
John.
Okay. Anything you want to work? So any recruits out there, parents interested in learning more about Temple, where can they go?
Uh, Temple, TempleFootball.com.
TempleOwls.com. That'll work.
TempleOwls.com. Yeah. We're out there. We're like everybody else. Probably Temple Football on Twitter is the best place, or I don't have Instagram, so I would guess it's on Instagram too. But our media team does a great job marketing the thing. You know, camps are out there. Games are out there. All games are on ESPN Plus unless it's a national game.
Yeah.
So like you said earlier, all games are on television. Check us out. We're expecting big things this year.
Yeah, fill out that questionnaire. I would think that'd be a good start, right, for any recruits out there. And if you got film, just make sure you got on huddle somewhere. And if a coach will probably follow up with you if they're interested in seeing it, I would think.
Absolutely. I mean, make sure your film's accessible. That's the thing I would say to these guys. If a coach can't find your film easily, then he's going to find the next guy's film easily.
Yeah, I'm not going to give away your contact information because as funny as it would be to have just a bunch of seventh graders be spamming you with like their junior football film, like, hey, coach, I got this. This is my Pee Wee film from.
John, you remember my son's in eighth grade, so I get it from the eighth graders all the time. I get random shots of them playing pickup basketball in their front yard. So
yeah. That's so you've sort of dealt with the teenage spamming stuff. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
so please don't. Okay,
that's a good group of eighth graders though. So go ahead, boys.
It is a good group, but you heard what Coach Ginn said. He said just work, focus on getting better. The film will be there. Okay, it's just at some point, but just focus on getting better. So okay, Brian Ginn, appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, John.
Yep.
All right.
Hold on one second, Brian.
Yep.